This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here with Burgundian winemaker Jean-Michel Jacot, who is joining us from Domaine Lucien Jacot. How are you today, sir?
Oh, very well. We're very pleased to be here with you.
Now, we've just been talking a little bit about the history of your family's winery and how intertwined it is with the world of berries.
Yes, because in the 1950s and 1960s in Burgundy, even if it was still a bit of wine after the phylloxera killed a lot of vineyard, the wine business was not doing very well, and has been very important for the crop industry. I mean, for the berries industry, and especially the blackcurrants and raspberry liqueur. I mean, fruit. And at that point, we used to sell a lot of this fruit already to the people around Dijon to make this lovely crème de cassis, but also to the town of Grasse in the south of France, where they make the perfume and the aromas for the food industry. And it was something very new. They started to put aromas in yogurts and all sort of things for food, and that was doing very, very well. So that's why we have been doing a lot of various fruit, and my grandfather used to pick up some raspberry up to 30-40 kilometers away, and we used at that time produce about 400 tons a year.
You were mentioning that some very famous sites in Burgundy were actually planted to black currants.
Yeah, if you go to this lovely museum, fruit museum in Nuit Saint-Georges, about the cassis, you will see at the Cassisium a few pictures will show you a few blackcurrant liquor, even in the Clos de Vougeot, which is has such a reputation today about his wine. But this was a time where people were trying to live with something, and yes, you would find some cassis even in places like that.
Now, your grandfather was making wine, but only on a much smaller scale, and also selling that in barrel. It was your father who first had the idea of putting his name on the label and bottling in, I guess, some kind of capacity.
Yeah, at that moment, the beginning of the 60s, you understand that most of the wine, what we call the winemaker, was actually making the wine, but up to the barrels, and they will sell to the other people, which was the wine merchant, who will continue to keep the wine in barrels for a few months, bottled it, and certainly do the commercialization of the wine in bottles. But of course, for some reason, I suppose at that time, a question of price too, my father started to think that it could be interesting to start bottling. So very early in the 60s, he started to do a little bit of bottles, and it went up very quickly to 10, 20, 30,000 bottles when he took over in 1989.
Now, you had a slightly different career path, because you ended up really getting into raising sheep, I believe.
Yes, I always enjoy working in a vineyard, always enjoy tasting wine, but I did also really enjoy working with animals. And this took me away for 10 years, and I had a great chance of going to work in New Zealand with sheep and cattle, and I've been a sheep shearer for 5 years before to come back. But the day came when my sister and I wanted to take over, and I came back, and I have to say that the first thing I had to do is to learn a little bit more about enology, because even if I follow what my father was doing, I needed to know a tiny bit more of that. But most of what I know, I did learn it from friends during lovely tasting in their own cellar. So we certainly had a lot of fun doing this, but I certainly did put in my little brain a lot of interesting things and confidence from them, who slowly teach me how to make wine, but certainly show me, or I slowly could see where I wanted to go myself. And I joke that it took me perhaps these last 25, 30 years to know exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm very pleased now that I believe what I'm doing is perhaps what I wanted to do. Even if I certainly don't believe, then I will be stopping there, because it's always something interesting to learn and to try it.
How would you say your wine today differs from your father's, both the winemaking process and the final result in the glass?
Yeah, it has been a big difference, because my father used to macerate the grapes for 1 week, and that for me was just too short. So straight away when we took over, we went to 2 weeks to get a bit more background to the wine, and we're now doing 3 weeks. But because I was saying that I have certainly an opinion of what I want to do, these 3 weeks has been now 1 week of keeping the grapes cold, 1 week of full fermentation, and the last week is certainly a week where I don't want to get any strong tannin, so we leave the macerate just with one spray a day, something like this, but certainly no pigeage anymore, no pushing the skin anymore.
And when it comes to the topic of cooperage, how does your approach differ from your father's?
I'm afraid that when we took over, my father had a lot of old barrels, and that's another thing. I believe very strongly on aging the wine in barrels, especially because of the micro-oxygenation going through. But then this lovely toasty taste you get from the barrel. But with the sort of wine I make, I certainly don't want to cover the wine with wood. And so I will never work with more than 20% of new oak, of new barrels in my wine. I want to get something which is well balanced between the wood and the fruit, and I certainly don't want to cover the fruit with the wood.
When it comes to vinification, you are still using concrete vats for some of your fermentations, right?
Yeah, I have to admit, one reason was the price of the concrete vats when we built the new winery, because it's about 1 to 10. But it's also because concrete vat, I still believe very strongly on it, because when it starts fermenting and you have a problem with temperature, you have to think that it's got to warm up the concrete at the same time, so it doesn't get this very quick high temperature you perhaps don't want. And the same when you finish the fermentation, you don't want the temperature to go down too quickly, and it's because the vat is warm, it's going down a bit slower. And perhaps you have to learn of playing with this, but I'm certainly happy with doing it like this. We still have the machinery to cool down the juice and warm it up, but it's a nice way of doing it.
And these are not lined vats that you're using?
So
these are not lined vats that you're using. It's the concrete.
Yeah, no, it's a normal concrete vat, but we neutralize the concrete every year after washing them, and it's no problem at all.
Yes, you think that's the best way to vinify Pinot?
Well, I wouldn't say it's the best way, because if you control the temperature very nicely in a stainless steel, you can perhaps have the same sort of thing. But I'm happy of doing it in this concrete vat, that's for sure.
What are your thoughts when it comes to organic and biodynamic viticulture and winemaking in Burgundy?
Well, if I don't want to go up to be one of those people who are admitting that they do these sort of things, we certainly, and thanks to them, had a debate 20-25 years ago about what we were doing, and it certainly showed to people that we had to change a little bit the way we were making wine and certainly growing the grapes. But today, even if people like me are not showing them on the label, or we are not organic or not biodynamic, I believe quite strongly on what they do, but we perhaps don't go to the same level, and I don't want to take the risk of, I want to keep the possibility to spray 1 or 2 times a year with a chemical just to save the harvest. I don't want to take the risk of going too far, and I like a certain balance in all this, and but I do believe that it's a very important thing to do. And in the last 20 years, we completely abolished perhaps 75-80% of chemicals in our place. We don't use weed killer anymore, we work on the land, and it's true, the idea is to really give to the land a lot of life, and it works. I mean, you certainly can see a lot of worms, a lot of bacteria, and even animals like a hare and rabbits will go through when before it was not so much.
Jean-Michel, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today and giving us a chance to taste through your range of wines today. Not everything, because you make, how many wines do you make now?
About 15 different wines in our
15
place.
different wines.
Yeah. And, red and white, Aligoté grapes, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Our Pinot Noir takes us up to 30 kilometers away. We are a bit lucky to rent some vineyard away, because for a little family business like us today, it's, I would say, nearly impossible to buy anything because of the value and the price of the land.
And how much did your family buy those vineyards for originally? Because you were telling me the price, and it was quite something.
I'll take always the value of one special Premier Cru, because that's where we know exactly where we are. But my grandfather bought it for €1,500, and the value today is between 600 and 800,000.
Goodness me!
But of course, that does give. I want to say that doesn't give us anything in our pocket. We're still growing the vineyard, we still make wine, but it can be a big problem during the heritage, because we have to pay a large part of tax.
Yes,
and our government still don't want to understand that we should pay for €1,500 and not 800,000.
From the original price.
That's right.
Michel, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot.
Bye for now.
Thank you.